Okay, I'm back with one more video for today. Hopefully it won't be as long as the others, but maybe we'll be sort of improvising these. But I have some notes. You guys know how I do. Uh, we're discussing Dora, and I just want to go over a larger point that Freud believed in. The so-called biogenic law, which could be summed up, it's a tongue twister, but it's a nice one. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Oh man, this shit is busted. Oh, maybe I was supposed to peel this off. Haha. I've been writing on the plastic the whole time. Okay, I'm a genius. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. This is the notion, popular, Darwin's theory comes along in the 1850s, and he establishes the fact of evolution, but not his theory of how particularly it's the mechanism of natural selection doesn't take hold in a universal way until the 20th century. So when Freud's coming up, Darwin's well known, but this idea is still dominant. And this is the idea that, what does this say? Ontogeny recapitulation. The development of every individual member of a species repeats, recapitulates the development of the species as such. So when you're a little tiny, zygote, like when you're just cells dividing at first in your mother's womb, you're going through, as you become a recognizably human shape, you're going through, according to this law, it's not true, this is not how it works, but this is what they thought prior to what we know today about genes and DNA and how the code's transmitted and everything in your cellular tissues. They thought you were basically repeating the entire evolutionary history of your species in utero. And then through your adult life, you were trying to reach a point of mature development, and this was part of this theory as well. So it's like a theory of development. Okay, so theory of development, and that. So what is the point of this? Why is this important for Freud? Well, Freud thought that people who were mentally sick, people who became neurotic, and people who became hysterical and hysterics, they were stuck in their development. They were trapped at early stages of human emotional maturity, and that they couldn't, they were unable to progress. And he never published these ideas, but he even went so far as to say that civilization itself could be seen this way, as we're stuck at certain points. Like, for example, religion was a point where people got stuck. And Freud was deeply atheistic. But anyways, so you see this law, he's talking about this with Dora, because Dora needs to grow up, according to Freud. And she's regressing, but she's regressed. Okay? She's regressed to a childhood stage where she's having these feelings about her father, and she's not able to actively evolve into a sexually mature woman who wants a partner who's not her father, namely K. And this is this strange thing that Freud keeps insisting on. Why is she not into this dude? Okay, so very odd, but we're going to look at two other passages now in the text. let's and again we're gonna revisit now this scene of that fateful moment on the lake when Erke makes a pass at her, she rejects him. Freud thinks it's wrong for her to reject him because she does love him, so she should be into this. It, it's so strange because Freud is otherwise a man who's fairly into propriety, proper behavior, and by rules of propriety, Erke is doing the wrong thing, and Dora's doing the right thing. She's like, "You're married, you're much older. Of course, I'm not gonna. Even if I do love you, it's wrong to pursue this. How can this work out? It's gonna destroy your marriage. I'm a kid. Not gonna be good for me. What are you doing? She's in the right here. Okay." And as if you haven't finished the book yet, sorry, spoiler. Surprise, surprise. When the therapy ends in January, guess who's the one who decides to end it? No, Dora. Dora, and Freud experiences it literally as like a breakup. Dora breaks it off with Freud. Okay, just like she's had to break it off with these other dudes in her life, these older men who are obsessed with her father and Erke. So look at bottom of 38. And again, Dora's a captivating person. She's beautiful. She's super smart. She's captivating. Bottom of 38 now. Nothing he did, this is her father, as it happened, seemed to make her feel so bitter as his readiness to take the lakeside scene as a creation of her own imagination. Again, this is his fateful moment when Erke came onto her and she pushed him away. She was beside herself when she thought that she was believed to have been deluding herself over it. I was baffled for a long time too. I was baffled for a long time as I tried to work out what self-accusation was hidden behind her passionate rejection of that explanation, that she'd made it all up. It was right to assume some hidden factor in it, for an accusation that misses a mark does not leave a lasting resentment. In other words, why is she so obsessed with this fact that they accuse her of making this up? If it was untrue, she would just move on. Okay, as he says here, for an accusation that misses its mark does not leave a lasting resentment, whereas one that does will leave a resentment, will hurt. Untrue things we brush off. True things we don't. On the other hand, I came to the conclusion that Dora's story must correspond to the truth. So again, you see Freud himself dealing with his own feelings here. He's ambivalent. After she understood what Erke's intentions were, she did not let him explain herself, but slapped his face and ran away. Good for her. Her conduct probably appeared to Erke at the time, when he was left behind, as inexplicable as it does to us, for he must long ago have concluded, from innumerable little signs, that he could be sure of the girl's feelings for him. In discussion of the second dream, we shall find the answer to that puzzle and also the reason for self-accusation that we had looked for. When Dora's complaint of her father recurred with tedious monotony, she's like going on and on and you see in that just calling her complaints tedious monotony, that is boring, over and over the same thing. For its opining here in a way that he reveals his own feelings about Dora. Okay, his countertransference, and she went on coughing. It made me think it was to him that the significance of the symptom related to her father. In fact, and Freud says earlier that often what her symptoms are doing are they're mimicking her father's own real ailments, that she's sort of identifying with him. And you have to see in all of this, in I don't know if you probably do have relatives like this, or you yourself are like this, and no offense, be you. Be weird and strange and neurotic. It's fine. It's part of having a personality. People who have symptoms that are not real, hypochondriacs, what they're really after is our attention. They want to feel noticed and loved. When all else fails, pretend to be sick. It's like what kids do. Okay, and we all have a little bit of that kid in us still later in life, unless you're totally dead inside. And don't die inside, you guys. Remain childlike to some extent. Okay, this law is bullshit. In fact, the features that I usually considered necessary for an explanation of symptoms were far from being present. According to the rule that I have found confirmed again and again, although it did not although I have not felt bold enough before to call it a general rule. A symptom is a presentation or realization of a fantasy with sexual content. That is to say, a sexual situation. So the cough that she has that won't go away, and it's not tuberculosis, it's not bronchitis, it's not the flu, it's not COVID, it's not a real sickness. She's coughing all the time. This cough is an expression by the unconscious of a sexual wish. What could it be? And this is where Freud plays detective, and we are supposed to buy this. Or I would do better to say, at least one of the meanings of the symptom corresponds to the presentation of a sexual fantasy. While there is no such limit to the content of its meanings. When you enter the field of psychoanalytic work, that is, work dealing with the unconscious mind, you very soon find out that a symptom has more than one meaning. Just like material in dreams, Freud will tell you, is condensed, and that the thoughts behind it are multiple. If someone is in your dream, they're not just one person that it reminds you of. They'll remind you of multiple people. You very soon find out that a symptom has more than one meaning and serves to present several unconscious thought processes at the same time. I would like to add that, in my opinion, a single unconscious thought, process, or fantasy is hardly ever enough to generate a symptom on its own. So it has to be more than one thing, more than one unconscious wish to create a symptom. I very soon had an opportunity to interpret Dora's nervous coughing as the outcome of a fantasized sexual situation. And you got to imagine this guy talking to her about this. She's 18. He's much older. How old is he at the time? He's 44. Like her father's age, basically. When she pointed out yet again that Fourquier loved Papa only because he was a man of means, I could tell from certain circumstances affecting her use of this expression, which I shall pass over here as I do with most of what is purely technical in the process of analysis, that the opposite of this remark lay concealed behind it. Her father was not a man of means. This could only be meant sexually, and Freud's basically telling you how the unconscious tends to store things in pairs, in dichotomies. Man of means with not a man of means, night with day, sexual impotency with sexual potency, and so on. This could only be meant sexually because her father is a man of means. He's a successful businessman, and that's what means. It means having money. That idiom, to be a man of means, is to be a man of having lots of money and the power that comes with it. You have the ability to do things, the means to do things, if you have money. He had no means of making an impression as a man. That is to say, he was impotent. When she confirmed this interpretation as something of which she was aware, I suggested to her, like she knew this about her dad, I suggested to her that she was contradicting herself if she said, on the one hand, that her father's relationship with Fourquier was an ordinary love affair, but on the other hand claimed that he was impotent and unable to exploit such a relationship. Her answer clearly showed that she did not happen to acknowledge the contradiction. She said she knew very well that there was more than one way of achieving sexual satisfaction. However, she could not see what the source of her knowledge what the source of her knowledge was. When I went on to ask what she meant, whether she meant making use of human organs other than the genitals for sexual intercourse, she said yes. And I was able to continue that train of thought, that she had in mind those parts of her body that were in an inflamed state, her throat and oral activity. She could not, in fact, admit as much, but she did not need to be able to explain it fully for the symptom to appear. However, the corollary was irrefutable. Her spasmodic coughing, which as usual was set off by a tickling in her throat, represented a situation of sexual satisfaction per os, that is, having oral sex. Between the two people whose amorous relationship was constantly undermined, the fact that very soon after I had provided an explanation for her coughing, to which she listened without comment, the cough disappeared, was of course in tune with the explanation. But she did not want to know, but we did not want to dwell too much on this change because it had often occurred spontaneously before. In other words, you see what happens here, right? He explains her cough as a symptom of a sexual fantasy, and the sexual fantasy is oral sex, a woman performing oral sex on a man, and that might lead to, coughing, choking, whatever. And when he tells her this, that that's what your cough is about, her cough, first it materializes itself when she tries to answer him, and then when he explains what it is, that that's what it's about, it goes away. And then he doesn't want to dwell on it too much because she's had this cough come and go before, and he doesn't want to say that it's gone forever or rest on his laurels here. But you see what Freud's doing. He's forcing the issue. He's really pressing forward in these delicate matters, and he's alleviating her symptoms by explaining them to her. Okay? And this is an old idea, old motto in psychoanalysis. Wo es war, werd ich sollen. That's German for where the id was, where the unconscious is speaking, where the id was, the ego will be. Where before the unconscious is using your body to talk, and you don't know what it's saying, by knowing what it's trying to say and saying it, the symptoms will be alleviated. Okay? And that seems to be the case in this particular incident. Now let's go forward just to go to where Freud again brings up this a fear that she's regressing to the Oedipal stage with her father, where Freud really articulates this, and then where things get really complicated, which is that in the love that she appears to have for not just her father, but for Frauke. Okay, so Dora's sexuality is dispersed, her attraction is dispersed among all these people in this love triangle that she's been drawn into as this sort of plus one to their triangle, and being kind of given as payment to Erke by her father, and she really deeply resents this situation, even though according to Freud she shouldn't, because she likes Erke, she's into him, so what's the problem? And why resort to an Oedipal jealousy of your father? I'm at the bottom of 48 now, and then I'll leave you guys alone with all this disturbing stuff. For years, there was no expression of any amorous feeling for her father. So she seemed to outgrow that stage, and then she's falling back into it now. Okay, and this is this old idea of the ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. You develop, and you're supposed to keep developing, keep maturing, keep growing, and neurotics don't. Neurotics get stuck, and whole civilizations can get stuck. You could say, America is stuck at a certain stage of development. It's very, as the Black freedom author and civil rights champion James Baldwin said, we have a cult around adolescence in America. We remain in a strange, unhealthy way immature. For years, there was no expression of any amorous feelings for her father. Indeed, she was on very cordial terms for a long time with the very woman who had displaced her in her father's affections. And as we know from her self-accusations, she had even encouraged a relationship with her father. So while this was all getting started, she was homies. She was tight with Frauke. She loved her. They were best friends. She encouraged the relationship with the father. So why be jealous of it now? Okay? A lot of contradictions in her behavior. And this is sort of like the crux of things. This is like where the rubber meets the road. And these are the things that Freud has to point out to her. And again, he did this in a condensed way. Freud's early patients, he often you met him a lot, like almost every day, and you wouldn't meet for a matter of months, not weekly for years and years. It wasn't yet evolved into this kind of business and profession that it is today, where you just go to an analyst over and over on a weekly basis, and it never ends. It's just like a part of your life. The way, if you've ever seen like a Woody Allen movie, he seems to suggest that it. So her love had recently been revived for her dad. She's regressed backwards to this. The ontogeny is her development as an individual member of species is stuck. She's not moving forward. Um, it was obviously a reaction symptom in order to repress something else that was still powerfully at work in her unconscious mind. As things were, I thought first and foremost that love for RK was what must be repressed. I had to assume that she was still in love with him, but that the scene by the lake, for whatever unknown reason, set up strong resistance to such an idea, and the girl then revived and reinforced her love for her father. So that the first love of her adolescence years, now painful for her to remember, would no longer be present in her consciousness. Then Then I also gained an insight into a conflict very likely to shake the girl's mental life. On the one hand, she was sorry to have turned down the man's advances. On the other hand, there were strong reasons opposing such tender and longing emotions, among which it was easy to detect her pride. So she had persuaded herself that she wanted no more to do with RK. That was the advantage she gained from this typical process of repression. She's repressed the emotion, the feeling of longing for RK. And yet, to protect herself against the amorous feelings always pressing on her consciousness, on her conscious mind, she had to call on her childish love for her father and exaggerate it. However, there seemed to be another possible determination of the way she had been dominated almost entirely by bitter jealousy. I was not at all surprised to find that this idea aroused outright contradiction in Dora. In other words, Dora's like, "You're crazy. I'm not in love with this guy. I'm not repressing anything. I just find this all awkward and these people are gross." Okay, that for Freud is not a good enough explanation. And I'm kind of on Dora's side here as are most critics, because Freud is not really yet aware of his own transferences in the situation, his own countertransferences. The denial, but Freud and this is a controversial thing about Freud, Freud tends to read, when you say no really emphatically and immediately and a lot of times to your analyst, Freud tends to read that no as not just a no, but a sort of no that means, in a way, yes. It's what he calls obstinate denial. It's a telling amount of denial. It's like if you've ever read Hamlet, when they perform the little play within the play in Hamlet for Claudius, the king, gets up and says, "What? This is crazy! No, 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 no!" And to Hamlet and everyone, that reveals his guilt. Okay, so no can mean more than just no. That's the idea here. The denial that you hear from patients after you confront their conscious perception with the repressed idea confirms the repression and its firm establishment, so to speak, tests its strength. If we take the denial not as an expression of impartial judgment, of which the patient is incapable, but pass over it and continue work, the first evidence that no in such a case means yes, you want to find will soon emerge. She admitted that she could not be quite angry with RK as he deserved. She said that she had met RK in the street one day while they were walking with the girl cousin who did not know him. The cousin suddenly cried, "Dora, what's the matter with you? You're as white as a sheet." She had not felt herself changing color, but I told her that changes of facial expression, signs of emotion, obey the unconscious rather than the conscious mind, and give away more than the former. Give away more about the former. On another occasion, so she sees him on the street and she turns white because she's in love with him. She's embarrassed. On the other hand, although Freud doesn't, again, take into account, she could just be embarrassed and not be in love with him, just be offended by how he treated her before. Okay? On another occasion, after several days of steady cheerfulness, she came to see me in a very bad temper and was unable to explain it. She was in the same horrid mood, she said. It was her uncle's birthday, and she couldn't bring herself to wish him happiness, and she didn't know why. My skills of interpretation were blunt that day. I had let her talk on, and she suddenly remembered that it was also RK's birthday, a fact that I did not hesitate to turn against her. Now it was not difficult to explain why all the presents she received on her own birthday a few days earlier had given her no pleasure. There was no present from RK, and he gave, and his had obviously been the one she had really treasured. Meanwhile, she stuck to her denial of my claims for a long time until towards the end of the analysis, evidence showing that I was right emerged. And so Freud is really in the first part of the book that we're getting to the end of here, and really I won't go over it, but he's just going to mention that there's a further complication, which is that Dora is attracted to and has been in love with at other stages in her development Frauke. And that's really why she brought her over to the father, was to her father, was to kind of have that amorous relationship begin, this love relationship between them that she could sort of live vicariously through Frog K.